Welcome into Hot Reads. It's time to talk NFL with Hall of Fame quarterback Troy Aikman. I'm Tom Vandervoort, and Troy, you get another look at the Green Bay Packers this week, another look at the New York Giants. And I remember a few weeks ago you were getting ready to look at the Giants. It was a game against the Patriots, and you said, you know, this team's coming up on a real tough stretch here. They could lose 6 in a row. They did win that game, but then they lost the next 3, and they're right in the middle of this tough stretch. And I got to ask you, after watching Drew Brees just fillet that defense last week, what the hell is going to happen when Aaron Rodgers gets a hold of them?
Well, it's, hey, it's been a tough couple of weeks for the Giants, and you're right. I mean, going back a few weeks ago, I had said that they could lose their next 6 games. Of course, that was a huge win at New England, and then they played pretty good the following week against San Francisco. They just failed to win, but to go 1-1 in those 2 games, that was good. And then the Philadelphia debacle, that was a team, obviously, Philadelphia, that has really struggled, and the Giants had them at home, and they didn't play well at all. And then, of course, on Monday night against the Saints, this is a huge game for them this week because they have lost 3 in a row, and they're capable of playing much better football. But that's going to have to happen this week, and it's going to be a tough task because, as you mentioned, playing the Packers and a red-hot Aaron Rodgers.
What about the defensive line on this team? That would seem to be the strength of the team, but watching what Brees did to them and how they were kind of handled by the Saints offensive line, is that a major area of concern this week?
Well, it is a concern because, looking at the Packers, I felt that the 2 games that were probably going to give them a real challenge in terms of going undefeated for the season was Thanksgiving Day at Detroit. Of course, they won. And then this upcoming game at New York. And the reason is that both of these defenses are capable of getting a lot of pressure on the quarterback without having to bring extra guys. And so you're able to leave them players in coverage. But the Giants, over the last few weeks, of course, no sacks against Philadelphia, and they just had 1 sack in each of the 2 previous games. So a combined 2 sacks over the last 3 weeks, that's got to be much better, and there's a good chance that Osi Umenyiora won't be playing. And so what initially looked to be a strength going into this game may in fact not be, and that's going to put a real bind on that defensive secondary.
There's no one who can dispute the fact that Tom Coughlin is a very, very good football coach, won the Super Bowl, had a great success in Jacksonville even. But every time they go through a rough patch, it seems like fans want to ask, has this notoriously tough coach kind of worn out his welcome with the team? And my question is, can that happen? Can a coach kind of lose the ear of his players? Can he wear out his welcome or sort of lose his effectiveness as a head coach?
Well, I think you can. I don't think that's happened in New York, but I think that a coach that's been somewhere for a long period of time, some people suggest that 10 years is about the max that any coach should be anywhere. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but I think that when you have players who have been on the team for a long period of time with the same coach, that sometimes messages fall on deaf ears. And looking at the Giants, they have struggled over the second half of the season for the last several years. But I think Tom Coughlin, I think he's an excellent football coach. Overall, he's done a nice job there in New York. But there's a lot of pressure on each and every one of these head coaches, and when teams struggle and they don't get to the playoffs and they don't win playoff games, typically those coaches don't stick around very long. And that's what happened in Jacksonville with Jack Del Rio just this week.
Absolutely, and not only did Wayne Weaver fire Del Rio, he sort of let himself go by selling the team. And that raises that question that we bring up from time to time about pro football in LA. It's been over 15 years since the Rams and the Raiders left, and the Jaguars are one of those teams that is always rumored to be going to LA. I know you played your college ball there at UCLA, and what's your take on LA as a pro sports town, as a pro football town? Why hasn't there been a team there for so long, and will things be different once they do get a team this next time?
Well, whether it'll be different or not, the NFL certainly hopes so. I think it'll be different when the team gets there, because I believe a team will surface there in Los Angeles. That team has to win. And, when I was at UCLA and we were winning, we were drawing pretty well. And when the team hasn't won, they haven't drawn well. And that's true really for all of the teams there in that market. When the Lakers are winning, people are showing up at the games and they're excited to be there. So that'll be the real key, and I think ownership is a big part of that. The NFL cannot afford to have a team go to Los Angeles and have it not work. And so it's going to take a pretty aggressive ownership group, in my opinion, someone who's capable of marketing the team and doing the things that are necessary there in Los Angeles. But I can't imagine any owner not wanting to be the owner of a team that's in the Los Angeles market.
Yeah, I guess it's like in LA, there's plenty of options if you don't have a winning team on the field to go watch.
That's right. There's a nice beach, you know, that a lot of people like to spend time at.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the game you called last week. And it was an interesting game with the Lions and the Packers. And, of course, we had the moment with Ndamukong Suh, his famous stomp now. And he's had some problems with the league, tearing guys' helmets off, whipping them to the ground. And whenever something like this happens, it always raises in my mind a little bit of a question about sort of the inherent violence in football. It is a very violent game. I don't really think we fans can appreciate it as much as someone like you who played out there. Could you talk to me a little bit about that balance that you have to have between being aggressive and being violent, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and not losing control of your emotions and not being out of control? Is that a hard line for guys to walk?
No, I mean, I don't think so. There's a lot of aggression that's in that sport, and at that level, in order to play in the National Football League, guys are pretty violent. They're big, strong, physical players that are obviously very competitive, and emotions run very, very high. And so you get into those types of games, particularly in the trenches, to where these guys are just battling each and every play. And guys tend to get upset if things aren't going in their favor. And you know, I would imagine that in those moments, it's hard sometimes to just walk away and then wait until the next snap. But by and large, that's what every player does. And unfortunately for Ndamukong Suh, he's had some problems in the past, some penalties and unsportsmanlike play, and roughing the passer and things of that nature. But what we saw on Thanksgiving, it's just not acceptable. I mean, it can't be tolerated in the sport. It's not being tolerated, as we know, because of the suspension. You know, what's interesting about Ndamukong Suh, I've had an opportunity to visit with him. I actually visited with him in production meetings prior to the Thanksgiving game. And he's, as everyone has said, he's a very likable guy. He's very intelligent, well-spoken, mild-mannered. And then he gets on the field, and apparently he's just got a pretty bad temper. But hopefully this will be something that he'll learn from and be better for it in the future.
Is there any reason for the head coach to be implicated in a sense in any of this? I mean, Jim Schwartz wants to punch out the other coaches. So is there any blame at all could be laid on the feet of the head coach for creating an environment where this stuff happens? Well,
I think that I know that in our production meetings, Jim Schwartz, went to great lengths to talk about why Ndamukong Suh had some of the penalties that he's had as far as roughing the passer. But I think in light of this and the comments that I've seen from Jim Schwartz, I think he handled it appropriately. The message has to be sent, whether it's in Detroit or any other NFL city, from the head coach, that type of behavior and those types of actions within the game are not going to be tolerated, and they're unacceptable. And I think that he did send that message, certainly to Ndamukong Suh, and if he didn't, the NFL did. But I think Jim Schwartz has made it clear as well that he's not going to tolerate that either.
All right, man. Very good. Appreciate your time today. Enjoy New York City, and we'll catch up with you next week.
All right. Thanks, Tom.
All right, Troy.